Hi, my name's Alastair Turnbull and I'd like to talk to you today about the Selkirk Grace. Now, before I tell you about the Selkirk Grace itself, I'll give you a definition of what a grace is. A grace is a small prayer usually said before a meal giving thanks for the food. The tradition usually comes from a Christian background, but other religions have their own versions of saying a grace as well. So a grace, a small prayer said before a meal giving thanks. The Selkirk Grace is a very popular grace in Scotland, and I'll recite it to you just now, the original Selkirk Grace. It goes like this. Some hae meat and canna eat, and some hae nane that want it, but we hae meat and we can eat, so let the Lord be thankit. Now that is actually said in a dialect of Scots known as Lallans. Not many people know that. They just recite the words that they've heard their father say or their uncle or whatever, but it is actually Lallans. One of the myths that is attached to the Selkirk Grace is that Robert Burns wrote the Selkirk Grace. Unfortunately, I'm a big fan of Robert Burns, but he didn't write the Selkirk Grace. In his lifetime, the Selkirk Grace was already very old. It's 80 to 100 years old when he used it. And it was originally called the Galloway Grace or the Covenanter's Grace. That brings me to the question, why do people think Robert Burns wrote the Selkirk Grace? It was because he used it often. It was his favourite grace. It was his go-to grace for an occasion it was at. He would always recite it. He's written other graces that are now known as the Poet's Graces, but this one he just recited. The more he recited this grace at meals, the more it became known as Burns's Grace. So that's the first myth. Robert Burns didn't write the Selkirk Grace. The second thing I'm going to tell you is, why is it called the Selkirk Grace when it was originally known as the Galloway Grace or the Covenanter's Grace? I believe the reason it's called the Selkirk Grace is because Robert Burns, again we're back to Burns, he used this grace at a meal in 1794. The meal was held in a place called the Heed Inn in the Kirkcudbright High Street. Kirkcudbright is a town in Scotland. At this meal there was a very important gentleman. The gentleman was called Dunbar Douglas, and Dunbar Douglas was the 4th Earl of Selkirk. Now, I don't know what happened at this meal or whether it was a very big important one, but pretty much ever since 1794, the Galloway Grace or the Covenanter's Grace became known as the Selkirk Grace because it was said at this meal. So that is where it got its modern title, the Selkirk Grace. The grace itself today is very, very popular in Scotland. It's used at weddings, it's used when families get together, it's used at many, many occasions. And it, pardon me, is still very, very well known. Burns himself used a different version of the grace. He never said the grace in Lallans. He said it in a much more modern way. I'll recite the Burns version just now. Some have meat, but cannot eat. Some have none that want it, but we have meat, and we can eat, so let the Lord be thankit. That was Burns' version, but people still prefer to use the original Lallans dialect. I'm going to say it one more time and say cheerio to you after that. So here is the famous Selkirk Grace one more time in the original Lallans. Some hae meat, but canna eat. Some hae nane that want it, but we hae meat, and we can eat, so let the Lord be thankit. I hope I've debunked a few myths about this grace, and I hope you continue to enjoy Burns. If you do enjoy Burns, give me 1 second. There's a lot about it in my book, The Food and Drink, Robert Burns. It tells you more about the grace and his association with it. There's also some other great poems in here with which have modern English translations with them as well. It's available on Amazon along with the other Burns books I've written. So thank you very much for listening, and enjoy Burns and enjoy the grace.